Laura Bogart wrote a piece for Salon titled, "I'm Trying Not to Hate Men." Now, to me, this article is a good representation of what I just decided to dub Neo-Feminism. In fact, somebody probably came up with it before me, but if they did, I didn't see it. So maybe it's my term, maybe it's not, but whatever. I think it's a good term for it, Neo-Feminism, because it's not, in my opinion, in line with what I would call traditional feminism, which is intelligent and which I actually agree with, which is the idea that, you know, when women were fighting for the right to vote, fighting for the right to work and be treated in an equal way, that made sense, and that makes sense today. But this new branch of feminism, this neo-feminism, I think goes a little bit too far. So let me read you the beginning, a beginning portion of this article, and then I want to discuss it. The thing she says, they get like a little bit graphic, so here's a slight forewarning, but so let's go through it here, and then I'll break down what my disagreement is with this new movement in general. She says, quote, "When I finally told my mother that the neighbor boy she'd been babysitting, which meant leaving the two of us alone together while she watched her soap operas upstairs, had started touching me in weird ways, she told me, with a forcefulness I'd never heard in her voice before, to never ever say anything to my father because, quote, Daddy would kill him, and we'd lose Daddy forever. And we certainly didn't want that. My father was the flint-fisted epitome of the alpha male that the pickup artists and the frat boy wolf packs aspire to be. My mother and I were images in a photo frame that assured his bosses he was a family man, a man who could be trusted. We were bellies and backs and cheeks, the soft places that bore his anger, or any feeling that found expression in his fists. And he was the axis of the turning world, at least to my mother, who sent my abuser, a choir boy, a Boy Scout, home to his parents with a polite explanation that he was simply too old to be babysat. Until his family moved, I'd seen him at the bus stop, and that copper penny taste of fear would flood my mouth. Before I could ever know anything different, this was maleness. Aggression and protection, equally awful. Something cowardly and brute. Something that hit you with its belt and pulled you beneath your favorite Lion King blanket and stuck its fingers in your vagina. Okay. So, look, she is disclosing a lot of personal information there about her own story. And on one level, you absolutely have to commend her for that, because it's hard. It's hard to get out there and say things that are basically just opening up your soul and your life to the world and saying, here's what happens to me, here's what happened to me, it's all out there, it's all bare. So on the one hand, I respect that, and I appreciate that, and of course, those are horrendous situations. I mean, the idea is, like, her father was a genuinely bad guy, and he was a guy who abused her, and then she was sexually abused when she was young, so she had all these horrific experiences that happened to her, and in no way do I discount anything from that. I mean, that's serious, and that should be addressed, and that those are problems, and those are crimes, and to discuss that is a worthy thing, and it's something that we need to do as a society even, because a lot of these things are pervasive things that happen. So, on the one hand, I hear her, and I'm with you. On the other hand, this is my problem with neo-feminism, is that it's actually very conservative in its nature. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you have a person that's willing to take personal experiences and then extrapolate to everybody else. Now, look, it's not me doing that, and it's not me extrapolating here. Again, I told you the title of the article. I'm trying not to hate men. Now, imagine if this was an article, just get rid of the word man and put in the word blacks. Put in the word Jews. Put in the word gays. Put in any other word you want, Muslims. And Salon would never run a piece that said, I'm trying not to hate blacks. I'm trying not to hate gays. I'm trying not to hate Muslims. I'm trying not to hate Jews. And then in the article, the person starts out and spends the first 3 paragraphs explaining how, hey, when I was a kid, man, I was mugged by a black guy. You know, my first black friend ever stole my wallet, and then 3 years later, I was mugged on the street by a black guy. See, I mean, look, these are what, are you pro-mugging? Are you pro-wallet stealing? You're not sympathizing with me? Well, I mean, that's crazy. The problem is I'm trying not to hate blacks. I'm being honest here. I'm laying it out for you. If we read that, all of us, we'd be like, what the okay, of course we don't want you to get your wallet stolen. Of course we don't want you to get mugged. But the idea that you can, in your own mind, the default position was an extrapolation that, well, I guess this is just in the nature of men, or I guess this is just in the nature of blacks. I mean, that honestly, that's crazy. That's the same kind of generalized thinking that we hate it when conservatives do it. So why should it be any different if it's a so-called progressive doing it? In fact, I'd argue that's just not progressive. That's not progressive to talk about things in that way. Because the whole idea of being a progressive is to be specific and to be accurate and to be factual in the way you look at things. So you understand that people are individuals. So when you look at a man, you don't say, I'm going to assign onto you everything that's ever happened to me in the past and everything I've ever seen negative in every other man onto you. You look at a man and the man is an individual. Look, to me, this seems to be obvious, but there's this neo-feminism, which is actually very conservative in its nature, which argues that along with maleness, there are some default assumptions. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Malcolm X pre-Mecca. Malcolm X, pre the Hajj, was, he was very clear, all white people are devils. Elijah Muhammad taught us all white people are devils. There's a famous story, and it actually happened, and Spike Lee shows it in his movie too, where you have a young white girl at a college walk up to Malcolm X. This happened in real life before, he had his later conversion. And she said, look, I agree with most of what you have to say, and I really like you. How can I help you in this fight for rights and this struggle? Like, I want to help. How can I help? And he goes, you can't. And he walks away. And then later on, he realized, yeah, I was wrong to do that. Are you kidding me? Because when he was in Mecca, he drank from the same cups as white people and saw that not all white people are bad and all that. To me, that's the same feeling I get reading this article as listening to Malcolm X before the Hajj. It's the same thing as this idea that I'm just going to, you're a guy? Okay, you're guilty. And then, of course, she'll counter by saying I'm trying not to hate all men. But again, the underlying premise and the underlying assumption of your article is that, no, I truly believe that there's something inherent in men that's just, you're just bad by your nature. It's like everything any racist has ever believed, anything any homophobe has ever believed. It's not me, it's the gays. You know how those gays are. It's not me, it's the blacks. You know how those blacks are. But for some reason, it's different when you talk about men. Now, look, understand something, man. I get hate from every angle on whenever I talk about these issues. Because I've said openly, and I'll say it again because I don't like them. I don't like the men's rights movement. I think, honestly, on most issues, they're whiny little punks, and they're clueless, and they just have this victim complex, and they're wrong, right? I mean, they have a point on, like, divorce issues and stuff like that, alimony issues. So I'm with them on some issues, but on most issues, I think they're silly. So I'm not in any camp on this. I'm just trying to be as objective as I possibly can. And when I look at stuff like this, I think you're not being progressive. You think you're being progressive. You think you're being high-minded. You think you're being intellectual. But you're just doing this broad-based smear of an entire group because you had some personal bad experiences at one point or another in your life. And again, I'm one of those people, truth is always a defense, right? And in her article, she goes on to make some good points where she says, well, like, look at the wars throughout history done by men. Now, again, a lot of people on the other side hate it when I agree with that point, but it's true. Like, I've had some people say, yeah, but you don't know about the thing where the women made the men go to war and then they did it. So, wait. Assuming that's true, which I don't believe it, but assuming that's true, then you're telling me what? Men don't have a mind of their own and they can't say no, they can't think for themselves? So women are just more cunning than men and more clever than men to get them to go to war for them when the men didn't actually want to go. So either men are stupid or men are warmongers. That's not a defense, right? Yes, it's true. Most of the violence done in the world is from men. Most of the wars have been from men. There are definite issues and definite gender problems. There's still not total pay equality. There's still inherent biases in the way we look at women compared to men. When we say, a woman who sleeps with a lot of guys is a slut, is a whore. A man who sleeps with a lot of women is a stud. Yes, there are real issues, but when you smear like this and you take this position, you're not making any friends, and you're not being factual, and you're not being accurate, and you're not being progressive, and you're making more enemies than you are making allies. And you should understand that to flip the repression is never the right approach. It's like what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. You can't lead your way out of the darkness with more darkness. You can't take, male misogyny and sexism, which has been a problem throughout history. You can't take that and then say, thank you, we'll reject that, and now we'll do the opposite, and we'll do, female supremacy. It doesn't make you better. It makes you the other side of the same coin of hatred. So let's all try to be objective about this. Let's all try to be fair about this, and let's all, no matter what topic it is we're talking about, let's not try to smear across the board.